Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And this is episode 94. 94 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Second episode of season 12 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Jacob and I watched the third and fourth episode of Star Wars Droids, the Trigon Unleashed, and a race to the finish. We are cruising on ahead with Droids. And I'm super excited to get into it. But first, Jacob, should we do our summaries?
Yeah, can I do Trigon Unleashed?
Sure. I was gonna say I'll do Race to the Finish.
All right, great. So in the Trigon Unleashed, Thal Jobin and R2-D2 go to rescue their friends, leaving Kiamol and C-3PO behind at the speeder shop on Ingo. But Fromm gangsters attack the speeder shop. Thal comes back to rescue them, but they're all led into a trap and captured. Thal insists on only telling where he and R2 hid the Trigon satellite to gang leader Fromm himself. So they're taken to the Fromm hideout on Anu, where Jord Dusat and Demamol, are already being held. They escape together and they narrowly make it out of the Fromm base before the Trigon 1, which had been sabotaged by Thal, flies into the base, destroying both the Trigon and the Fromm hideout.
Absolutely. And in a race to the finish, the crew, including Thal and Jord, land on the planet of Bunta. And after a rough landing, they're greeted by an old droid named Proto One, who tells them that they were abandoned by their previous master. Meanwhile, we see the Fromm gangs touch down on the planet Bunta, and Fromm reveals he's hired a bounty hunter to go after and Jord and the droids, and that bounty hunter is revealed to be Boba Fett himself. C-3PO meets this droid named BL-17, who he becomes fast friends with, and maybe even something a little bit more. And BL-17 unwittingly pits him against Proto One, and it is revealed that BL-17 is working for Boba Fett and ensnared C-3PO to get him out of the way to get to Thal and Jord to try and anyway, so Thal signs up for a speeder bike racing on the Bunta. You could call it the Bunta Eve Classic. I don't know, something like that.
Let's call it that.
Let's call it that. Little does he know that once he finishes the lap of all the laps, Fromm and Boba Fett have put a detonator on his speeder, so it will blow up and kill him. Luckily, he figures it out and manages to get the detonator onto Boba Fett's speeder, and it blows up, though not killing the bounty hunter. They try to hunt him. The Fromm gang try to confront them, but Boba Fett is tired of their nonsense and turns them all over to Jabba the Hutt. Meanwhile, Thal and Jord get a job, but they can't take the droids with them if they want the job. So C-3PO and R2 make the selfless decision to jettison themselves into an escape pod so that their friends can get the job. All right. Where we want to start with the Trigon Unleashed.
And this was an interesting episode.
Yeah, it is.
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think this episode is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not the hugest fan of it. It very much the show kind of feels still at this point kind of like a collection of oddities. I would say it doesn't feel like it's really hadn't really found its footing by this episode, I would say. But I mean, I was most kind of interested in all the little odds and ends in this episode, as in many of these episodes. Like R2-D2 has a favorite TV show that's
what I took a note of that too. R2 has a favorite TV show. That's fantastic. That's canon to me now.
Yeah, like just like little things like that, I think really kind of make this episode and make this show what it is. And it's just so interesting to see, before everything that they did, before some of the rules, I guess you could say, of Star Wars, before the world building was quite so solidified and expansive as it is today. So that was kind of the most interesting thing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this episode. I gotta say, let's talk. I want to talk about Size and Fromm. I want to talk about them because the daddy issues are strong with this arc.
Oh my gosh. It wouldn't
Size
be Star Wars if there weren't
never,
daddy issues.
never, yeah, but even for Star Wars, these daddy issues are intense.
Oh yeah.
Size
Tell me about it.
never feels like Tig is measuring up to him. He always feels like he's a failure, except for that one brief moment where Tig thinks he's managing to get the Trigon back to them, and then that fades away
Yeah.
as soon as he fails. And you know, it's just so interesting to me that they have this incredibly confrontational relationship. Like, I wish you weren't my son, I believe, was a lot. Like, of all the suns in the galaxy, how did I manage to get you? Like, that's harsh even for Star Wars. That's like there's
Yeah.
some real bad blood going on there, and they're going to be now taken to jail because of, in part, I'm sure Size will think, because of Tig's incompetence with getting the Trigon back with trying to get the Trigon back in a race to the finish. But it's just so interesting to me that, like,
Yeah, I
what
mean,
gives with Size? What, like, he has to, like, is this guy just does this guy have absolutely no love for his son?
I mean, I don't know. It's played for laughs, but like there's a heavy shit. This is heavy shit. Like
It really is.
for
Yeah.
Star Wars, the mommy issues, the daddy issues. Like Star Wars has got that all in spades. The parent child, the troubled parent child relationship is something that Star Wars has explored, I mean, countless times in various different permutations and
Yeah.
angles.
But this seems oddly
So
one-sided.
yeah, it does. I mean, I think you have a situation. It's almost like you know who Tig really reminds me of. He reminds me of I'm blanking on his name. Kind of the wannabe gangster who takes over Sid's tavern in
Roland
season
Durand.
one. He reminds me of Roland Durand a lot.
Yeah,
Like he really needs that. He really needs that approval,
yeah, absolutely. And
but he's
and
not
Tig is
really cut out for.
incompetent, no doubt about it. But we don't know about Roland's relationship with his father.
I mean, we kind of know. I
We know
guess we
that
don't know. Yeah,
Roland got in on his father's name, but we don't
yeah.
know, like, if that was a I need my family to continue on, or like we don't know if that was a business decision or a business and a personal decision.
That's a fair point, but I think there are similarities
Yeah.
between them and kind of this idea of I guess in some way or another the we have these sons wanting to go into a certain profession, a criminal profession,
Or criminal possession,
um,
like both in the crime industry, yeah.
because they think that they want to, because that's what they've been steeped in, but they're
Because they
really
want to be
not cut
like their
out for it,
dad.
and they'd really be better off. Like that's clearly not where their passions lie, you know? Like
Or
clearly
it's not
they're
even
meant to
about
be
their
doing
passions, it's just they're not very good at it.
that. Yeah, they're not good at it. Yeah,
They're just
they really.
incompetent.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, it's really interesting. The father-son relationship is just really interesting, and it puts this heavy, like again, we were saying this with Michael McCoy last episode. I didn't expect this to have that many heavy themes.
yeah,
Like like at the beginning, I thought, like, oh, we'd have to use throwaway lines of dialogue to insinuate how droids are treated in the galaxy, and we have to do some of that. But there's a lot more. Like Star Wars has always been about telling these real interpersonal stories, no matter how goofy, no matter how silly. This is an '80s cartoon, and it still has them. Not as many as something, say, like, I don't know, Andor, or even something like The Mandalorian. But this has it pulls its punches as a Star Wars story. It absolutely does.
yeah. I think a lot of it is kind of, yeah, it's framed in a very, ha ha, all in good fun manner, but it does deal with a lot of things that other Star Wars shows have taken much more seriously, which I find interesting. It's cool to see how, what is it prophetical maybe of this show to see all the similarities back when they were just kind of, we were figuring out what Star Wars you wanted to be outside of those first three movies.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure. I'm not really sure.
Also, this is the other thing, and this is interesting, and this is my only big question, logistical question with this arc, which is that we see that, and we hear that the Trigon 1 is Death Star capacity.
Yeah.
It can destroy a planet at full capacity. Why didn't the Empire know about this?
Yeah, it is a bit of a
And don't tell me that the Empire isn't in this arc, because we see there's an admiral, an imperial admiral, or an imperial officer, or something like captain, or what's his rank in the next episode?
What a funny name.
Admiral
It's
Screed.
Admiral
Screed.
Screed.
Screed. He's at the Bunta race.
Yeah.
So they're there. They just, conveniently didn't know about, a super weapon that's like eerily similar to one that they're designing right now.
Yeah. Or the fact
Interesting.
that the Empire, with all the Empire's massive economical and military power, with the giant industrial complex at their command, it took them 20 years, almost 20 years, and the size of a moon to do it. And some random gangster family made like a planet killer. What can't be more than a few hundred yards in any direction.
That is also a good point. But
that's just kind of funny.
The Trigon 1 is a really weird thing. But I what I really love about the Trigon 1 is, hear me out, okay? The Trigon 1 is the droid's version of the Malevolence.
How so?
Well, think about how they destroy it. And by it, I mean both of them.
Oh. No,
they do the exact same thing. They use the weapon against itself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they crash the Malevolence into the moon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I'm calling, I feel like this is a mix of a lot of criminal stuff we've seen in like Boba Fett and Bad Batch, but like story beat wise, I feel like this is very similar to the Malevolence. And I also, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I just there's a line at the end where it says, "You let evil destroy itself," which is like a damn good line.
Another banger. It's right up there with what does C-3PO say? Freedom is everyone's fight.
Freedom is everyone's fight from last episode. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Man, banger line. They need to. Some show needs to drop a reference to that line.
Oh, 100% one of these things.
Another thing that's interesting to me is C-3PO is portrayed so differently, I feel, in this show compared to anywhere else in Star Wars. I think he's given so much more agency just from the fact that he's physically much more spry and agile. Like we see that scene, I can't remember which episode it is now. Sorry. We see the scene where he body slams another droid. He tricks the Fromm guard in this episode when he's held in prison with he says like, "Oh, I hope they don't find out about the jewels."
Oh yeah, that was fantastic. And using 3PO's talkativeness against that's fantastic.
Yeah, like nowhere else in Star Wars does C-3PO really have this much moxie, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, he's a baller in this.
He is an absolute baller. No doubt about it. It's kind of, yeah, it's interesting that they took some creative license, I think, with his movements and what he can do. And it's just, I don't know. It's something I was thinking about. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think it's interesting. I mean, again, 3PO and R2 are interesting characters to center the show around. We saw this with the Clone Wars. We saw this with those 2 droid episodes. And it's the question of how, because C-3PO, no offense to him, I love him so much, but he's a passive character. He doesn't exactly do much a lot of the time.
Yeah.
R2 can be extremely active, but you don't want R2 to be so active that he fixes everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's striking that balance between how, because the idea of Lucas originally in New Hope is to have R2 and 3PO as the 2 fools wandering through the desert. So how smart do you make them? How active do you make them? I think they strike an interesting balance in the show, and they make 3PO a bit more active than I would have made him. which is definitely an interesting decision that, again, I wouldn't have made, but I think works well. R2 is pretty active. Like R2 is exactly what I'd expect him to be, but 3PO has a bit more agency than I thought he was going to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's interesting, but I think it's done in such a way that it, like, you know, it never feels like they're like, it always feels like they're in danger. Like it's never like, the only thing I know that's keeping them alive is their plot armor, and not like, oh, they're just too good for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're never too dominant. They're
Like
never too
Boba
dominant.
Fett feels like a genuine threat. The Fromm gang at times, maybe less so towards the end because they've just beaten them over and over again. But the Fromm gang feels like a genuine threat.
I disagree, honestly, but at least by the time this arc is kind of over, I'm kind of like, really? Really, Frond Gang? We
Yeah,
still on this?
I mean, they're a bit
Because they just,
cartoonish.
I don't
This
know.
is a cartoon.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah,
it's to be expected, with we have to consider like the
Size
target
Fromm
audience of
is
the show.
very, very mustache twirling,
Oh
but
yeah.
I kind of like it.
He's not nowhere near as mustache twirling as the episode 5 and 6. I can't even remember their names, but that was just,
We'll get to that in the next
yeah,
episode.
that was just ridiculous.
But yeah, I really quite. Do you have anything else about the this episode, the Trigon Unleashed?
Not really. I
Actually,
don't know. I
I'll
feel
say
like we
this
haven't.
about both episodes. Actually, I've been meaning to say this for quite a while, but I just need to do a rant about something. Okay,
Okay.
stepping softly in a danger zone.
Why is
No
that song not on
weapon
Spotify?
in my hand, just this brain designed by man's got me in trouble again. Trouble again. I put my life in jeopardy in the service of my friends. I wouldn't care, but it's a dangerous affair. I'm in trouble again. Trouble again. In trouble, in trouble, in trouble again.
Thank you, Eli, for that beautiful musical rendition.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'm
I
obsessed with
still.
this song. I'm obsessed with this song. The first time I heard it, I'm like, this is nice. Second time, I'm like, I'm into this. Third time, I'm like, this song's so fucking good. And the fourth time, I literally wrote out all the song lyrics in my
Nice.
notes
I'm
because I'm
still
so
not.
obsessed with this song.
I'm still not used to. I'm still not used to having a Star Wars show with a theme song, like a real theme
With a
song
with a
lyrics.
with a lyrical theme, with a lyrical song and everything. Yeah.
It's incredibly strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good song.
It's a damn good song. It's written by Stuart Copeland of the Police. Of course, it's a good song.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I found this other version. I want you to take a look at this version. It's by a band called the Cybertronic Spree, and it's people in robot costumes doing the Droids theme song.
Uh-oh.
Just hear me out on this, okay?
All right, I'll hear you out. I'll hear you out.
It's ridiculous. You can see this, right?
Yes.
Can you hear it?
Can you turn it up a little bit?
Okay, don't the Cybertronic Spree, the band, don't they look like enemies they would have faced down in Droids?
Oh yeah, absolutely, of the
Evil
era.
Droid Corporation or something like that.
80s, 100%. Yeah, evil.
I'm gonna post that
samurai
in the description of
droid
this episode because
mashups.
it's too funny not to, honestly.
Yeah, it's great. It's
It's
great. Shout out the Cybertronic
fantastic.
Spree. Excellent.
Cybertronic Spree, the goats. But yeah, I fucking love this song and I get hyped every time I hear it. I said something very controversial with a bunch of group chat with a bunch of my friends the other day, which is that I think the Droids theme song is the best Star Wars song, tied only by Duel of the Fates, Binary Sunset, The Imperial March, and the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a hard pass on that one.
I understand.
We might have to end
Every
the episode right here. Goodbye,
no,
everybody. It's been fun.
no, I understand that's a very hot
No.
take, and I will stand by it. But it's just so fucking goofy, and I love it. I love it to pieces. I get
Yeah.
It's honestly, I would honestly tell you, maybe like it's probably my favorite part of the third episode.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
which is something about the quality of the third episode, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it pretty much nails the whole shtick of the show, which is,
Absolutely.
oh, here's R2-D2 and C-3PO. What
Yeah.
wacky scenario will they escape this week?
Yeah.
Oh no,
Although
what's it
again,
gonna be?
we discussed this last week, and this seems very like because we're recording our episodes 94 and 95 of In a Galaxy on the same day for context. So we've watched 5 and 6. But my point is, this show works in arcs. These are 4-episode arcs, and you can't convince me otherwise. Because the Fromm gang arc is 1 through 4. You know, we're gonna get with 5 and 6 starts the next arc, which I'm calling the Tamuzan arc. And if you look, how many episodes are there of droids? Actually, let me see how many episodes. Yeah, I think that the last 6 episodes, from Kobe and the Star Hunters to the Frozen Citadel, I think will be the last arc. So I don't think it's gonna be a 4-episode. I think it's gonna be a 6-episode. But this is way more serialized than I thought it was going to be. It's just way more serialized than I thought it was gonna be.
Me too. For the kind of show that it was billed as when I was kind of doing some initial research on it. I am surprised by how strong the plot is.
And it takes itself
it really
seriously.
Isn't just flavor of the week. Yeah.
It takes itself incredibly seriously, even if it is goofy.
It's incredibly goofy by today's standards.
Do you want to go to a race to the finish?
Oh yeah, sure.
So first one I wanted to talk about was the Boonta Eve Classic, or specifically the planet. They mentioned, by the way, they had a speeder race on Boonta, and this episode was in. Wait, give me a second. This episode was released in late 1985. Okay, keep that in mind for a second. This episode was released in late 1985. Okay, first draft of the Phantom Menace, Lucas started writing it late 1994, around 9 years later. It did the pod race on Boonta, but 9 years before the pod race.
Wow. I mean,
that's freaking incredible.
When you say it like that, 9 years really doesn't seem like enough time. Like, it really, I don't know, so it's what, 15 years between when the Menace of Ed did actually make its way into the world. But even so, that's a long 15 years to go from this to the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, but like it's just incredible to me that basically this is the same thing as the Phantom Menace, except for a little bit more dangerous. Oh, where have we seen that recently?
Yeah.
Riot racing anybody? The Bad Batch faster?
Yeah, I mean, like, Star Wars always loves to recycle itself,
Yeah, but specifically the racing tropes. We talked about this with Michael last week, of course.
We did, yeah. I think Michael said something like Star Wars is a flat circle, or something like that. Something to that effect.
No, I was just saying about
after watching this episode. I really think he's right.
I was just saying, like, specifically, like, its fascination with racing.
Oh yeah. We talked about that a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just very cool to see the interesting with stuff with fast cars. Yeah,
this was some. I have to say, the whole Boonta thing. There was some pretty scrumptious world building in this episode. I had a lot of fun. With the Boonta scenes, personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know what you thought
this is just a blast of an episode. I think this is my favorite episode of all 6, actually. That I think.
I think this is easily the
Yeah.
easily the best of the ones that we've seen so far, or at least my favorite. I think
Yeah.
the whole Boba Fett. We'll
Boba
get to
Fett
Boba Fett, but
reveal. The Boba Fett reveal. Let me talk to you about something. On Disney Plus, the thumbnail of this episode is Boba Fett.
yeah.
So I knew going into this episode we were getting the Boba Fett. And
Yeah.
this is, by the way, Boba Fett in this is designed exactly the same way he is designed in the holiday special sword.
Yeah. I actually had to watch this episode on YouTube because my Disney Plus was acting up and I couldn't get anything to play when I was trying to watch it. So the Boba Fett
Oof.
was actually a surprise for me.
But anyway, even
which was
saying
pretty
that,
great.
even having said that, when Fromm talked about this bounty hunter he was hiring, and he was like silhouette, and I'm like, oh, here it is, and then Boba steps out. I'm like, that's fantastic. Like the
Yeah.
buildup was so cheesy and so fantastic, and only a way droids could do. And like, Boba Fett seems like a real, like, what does he do? Like, again, what does Boba Fett do in Empire and Jedi? Nothing. He does nothing in those movies.
But everyone's scared of him.
But everybody's scared of him, and he's made an incredible threat. But here's another one to tease what says he's next episode. What does IG-88 do in The Empire Strikes Back? He literally stands there.
Nothing.
He literally, the prop of the IG-88 like prop was literally nailed down to the floor.
Yeah, well, I think that's
he literally stands there, and then Droids introduces him in 6 and makes him really fucking scary.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of the power of, especially for Boba Fett, it's the power of the unknown. I mean, obviously now we know a lot more about him, but
yeah,
back then, it's the power of the unknown, of this mysterious character where you give him this weight, you give you give so much mystique, and kind of you give this character leaves such a wake wherever they go.
Give me a second.
I think that's a great storytelling tool that kind of doesn't get often, I think, doesn't get used as much as it should nowadays, just because
the mystery stuff.
we have there's so many tools now in terms of the visuals and everything that can be done. There's so many tools at a director and a writer's disposal. But I really like it because it's kind of an example of doing more with less.
Absolutely.
I guess you could say, if that makes sense.
I looked, by the way, at the Legends continuity to see exactly how old Boba was supposed to be in this, because it sounds like he's a full-grown man, but he is 17, supposed to be in Legends continuity. But
when does this take place in the Legends continuity?
This is about 4 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, it's earlier than for some reason I'd gotten it twisted. I thought it was 4 years before the Battle of Yavin.
No, 4 years post Revenge of the Sith. Yeah. It's not going that far out of the way of our timeline. I mean, I think this is pre Fallen Order, if we're looking at like timeline wise. It's post Bad Batch 2 because we have to stall for that one. But but that's the only really out of order thing we're doing is droids. But yeah. Boba's just a badass in this episode, and I really just love seeing him in action, especially now that I like him as a character. Like I didn't with Book, until Book, I really didn't, or I guess Mando maybe, but yeah, it's just I love seeing him in action. What can I say? You look at that guy go.
Yeah. How about his voice though? How about his voice? Because this was pre.
This was pre-Tem.
This was pre-Tem, but I can't remember the entire story of because they did a voiceover in one of the special editions.
Yeah, but that was way after this.
That was way after this. So this was before any of that had been established.
This was before Boba was a clone. This was before Boba.
We really didn't know any.
Let's see. It
was
Don Franks. It was Don Franks who voiced him in the holiday special.
Okay. And who voiced him in the original? Was it? Oh gosh, what's his name?
Jeremy Bulloch. It wasn't. No,
it was not Jeremy.
It was Jason Wingreen.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
They dubbed over Jason Wingreen's voice. So
yeah.
So, but Don Franks wasn't trying to sound like Tem because Tem hadn't gotten the part yet.
Exactly.
Don Franks was trying to sound like Jason Wingreen.
Yeah, it's
And he
just
did very well,
yeah.
actually.
Oh, he did great. I'm just saying it's so interesting. It's kind of funny just to have this completely different. It's a
Interpretation of the
completely
character. Yeah.
different notion of who Boba Fett is.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
the more things like this happen, the greater the story, the more there are different versions of things, the more I kind of think of Star Wars less as a franchise and more almost as like kind of a mythology. Not to be too pretentious about it, but you've got
No, it
different
is.
versions of
It
stories
freaking
and
is.
different people who believe different versions or kind of choose which one that they like the best. It's really interesting how that's taking shape, something that I've been
Yeah,
mulling over lately.
absolutely.
See, what else about this episode?
Let's see. Well, we gotta talk about the stuff with BL-17.
Oh yeah,
So
we do.
for me, I alluded to this in my summary of this. To me, this has really confirmed the idea of, and I've seen this, like Lucas has described the bickering of R2 and 3PO like an old married couple. But this episode seals the deal for me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because the jealousy that R2-D2 gets and the like pretentiousness C-3PO of like, oh, this guy actually, like, imagine a guy who actually does the work for a droid that actually does the work for his master.
Yeah.
This reeks of, oh, I'm jealous. I don't think you're doing enough for me, so I'm going to try and make you jealous of me.
Yeah.
And
F3
sure, say it's just friends. Absolutely say it's just friends. Go with that if you want to. But we all know it's not.
3PO is such a petty god. He's such a
He's
petty god in
he's
this.
so petty in this episode.
It's hilarious. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's such a great and I honestly don't know, to Droids' credit, where else in Star Wars do R2-D2 and C-3PO get this much time as the primary characters? Do they get to be, you know, people, I guess, or
Yeah, or sentient like,
yeah.
really in beginning of New Hope, in beginning of Jedi, and
Yeah, I
that's
mean
really it.
they get to have they get to have feelings in this. And it's really cool to see their relationship, and
Yeah.
C-3PO with he kind of gets kind of, I guess you could say, he has this kind of infatuation maybe with BL,
Yeah.
and then he eventually, has to come back to R2 and they have to make up. It's a sweet
Yeah.
story.
Oh,
Really sweet
absolutely.
story.
And I love the and I love I freaking love the idea that like that BL tried to lure C-3PO away from R2 in order to get it's a classic trope, but I quite like how it was used here.
Yeah, how about
Uh
Proto One?
Proto One's interesting because we don't we think he's just a gruff droid, but he's actually been on the good side all along, which is a very
Exactly, yeah.
interesting twist. I like the double entendre of those twists.
Yeah, the fact that he is like an old droid
Yeah,
and he
but
acts,
old
it's very
doesn't mean
interesting.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also that line. There's also the line that C-3PO says, "We droids are often judged by the company we keep," which is really fantastic. A plus line. Yeah, droids are often judged by the and like what they were programmed for. What is can droids make decisions, or is it there, or are they just programmed to make decisions?
Yeah. I mean, you have to think that they can make their own decisions at this point, especially I feel like in droids, where in droids are the most like people than in anything else in Star Wars, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least so far. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of some of what we see, but it's fascinating. I will say that. I don't even yeah.
Yeah, no, there's some great stuff in both of these episodes. Let's see.
The race. How about the race?
The race is fantastic. I love the race.
Yeah, I thought yeah, I mean the poor Tiggy. Poor Tiggy, the whole thermal
Poor Tig.
detonator, hiring Boba Fett,
It
everything.
was a great plan and it just didn't work.
Yeah. I think yeah. The look, all credit to all the voice actors, but there was I think when the thermal detonator came off of when it came off of the so I'm blanking on the names. When it came off of Jord's speeder and it popped on Boba Fett's windshield and you get that a thermal detonator line. That was a voice acting is hard moment to me. Um,
Absolutely.
but I mean, I think it just adds to the I love how this show is kind of whether it's a product of the era or the young target audience. I love the campy moments. I think it's just great. It really
Yeah.
works
Oh,
in this
absolutely.
context in this show.
These episodes are just this episode specifically is just fantastic campy fun
Yeah.
is what it comes down to. Yeah, I'm glad. Speaking of Admiral Screed, we were talking about it earlier. I'm glad we finally got a tiny look into the Empire because it seems weird that we would have gone this far without it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're here and they're a presence in the galaxy. My thing is, and I don't know where Anu and Bunta and what's the other planet and Ingo are in the galaxy, but I'd assume the Outer Rim, which is why we don't see the Empire, because the further out you go in the galaxy, the less government control, Republic or Empire, you see.
Speaking of the Empire, you know what else is missing from
What?
droids?
What?
The Force.
Oh, absolutely. The
The
Force is
Force. I
missing.
think it's fantastic how, there was so much, it's kind of funny. There was so much fanfare. There was so much fanfare. I remember when Rogue One came out, even a little bit for Andor, but not really for real Rogue One and
Yeah.
some of these other Star Wars projects of, oh, no, Star Wars without the Force, the everyman Star Wars for the non-believer. Well, actually, it's it's been like that all along in a lot of ways. Everyone forgot
Yeah.
about this show.
And
Everyone
also
forgot about the
even
show,
let's look at Rogue One. Let's look at Rogue One, which is famous for not having any usage of the Force in that movie, except for
except for
when
Darth
Darth
Vader
Vader
doing Darth
appears
Vader
for
things.
5 minutes, and
5
then later in the
glorious
movie,
minutes.
and then later in the movie he appears for 5 more minutes using a laser sword or something. I don't know what it was, a lightsaber, I think it was, which is only the weapon of the Sith. And then let's look at Andor, famously not force sensitive anything at all, except for, oh wait, what does Luthen give Cassian before the mission on Aldani as a payment? It's a kyber crystal. And droids doesn't have any of the force, except for what does Thal find in the speeder in the first episode?
A lightsaber.
A lightsaber.
Yeah. But I think in many
Nothing in
ways,
Star Wars is truly free from the force.
yeah. Yeah, I think but in many ways I think the droids and Rogue One and especially Andor, they all kind of accomplished their mission. At least I think it felt like a clear goal of the show, at least for Andor, of really making the Force and the Jedi and the Sith seem incredibly distant and almost irrelevant to the story and to the reality of
Uh,
that the characters are living,
there's a fantastic
which I think is
word that you put in
fantastic.
there. There's a fantastic word that you put in there that I really appreciate, which is almost,
Yeah,
almost irrelevant. They're still there.
they're
I,
still
I
there,
just
but
I
like,
guess I'm just peeved. I see some people. I'm not saying you. This is not about you. This is I've just seen some people online talking about like, oh, I want Star Wars without the Force. You can't have Star Wars without the
yeah,
Force. You can have Star Wars distant from the Force, and this does it. But having Star Wars without the Force is removing Star Wars of a major key element of it, and you just
yeah,
can't do that. You can have it be. And I don't want to sound too preachy or anything. I just like the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. Is said 30 minutes into the first movie, and when I hear people talking about, oh, we want Star Wars but without the Force, it sometimes sounds to me like, oh, we want Star Wars just not in a Star Wars way.
yeah. I think that when people say that or when that is kind of purported as something to be super, yeah, important or revolutionary, I think it's a bit of a I think it's a bit of a misconception or maybe an oversimplification, because I think there is something to be said for Star Wars stories that kind of center focus on characters who don't know anything about the Force, you know? Like
Yeah.
like we have so much Star Wars that's really, really intimately detailed with the Jedi and the Sith. And then, it's really interesting with that all being established, see a show like Andor where honestly after watching Andor, after being put in that universe, any of those most of those characters, maybe Mon with the exception of maybe Mon Mothma, would like laugh at you if you told them that the Empire was like actually being controlled by this like wizard who sits around in a black bathrobe all day, you know?
Yeah. Or
Like,
like, the Bad Batch, which doesn't have anything from the Force in it,
yeah,
except for
it may. Oh wait, Gunji.
Gunji.
Yeah, hashtag
I guess what
spoiler
I'm really
alert.
saying, and I'm being kind of pedantic about it. I understand that, but Star Wars without the Force isn't Star Wars. How much it has the Force is absolutely up to the creator, but without the Force, like it, it's not that it wouldn't be good. I think it could be good. It's just that I'm not sure how well it would fit within the universe.
Yeah. I mean, I think it ties back to, I think in a similar vein to kind of this idea that I think a lot of people implicitly have, at least to some extent, where there's kind of this assumption that, oh, if something is really dark and gritty, then it automatically makes it like great,
Good.
fantastic storytelling.
Yeah.
I think there's a similar thing where, oh, if something's automatically centered around the Force or the Jedi or the Sith, then it automatically kind of becomes more, maybe a little more childish, maybe a little more corny, less mature, less
I will say this
good
actually, this,
storytelling, trademark good
yeah.
storytelling type of thing. I think there might be. I've noticed kind of an inverse. Those two ideas seem to be a little bit of the inverse of each other at times, and I think it's good
I,
to push back against that, because there's nothing that
yeah.
says that either of those things
Yeah.
have to be
I've
true.
actually seen a bit of an opposite of a dynamic that you've seen, which is I've
Really.
seen people who like Star Wars for being as non-Star Wars as possible.
Hmm. That's kind of what I mean, I guess, a little bit in the
Or and not about like the Force being childish, because the Force, obviously, I think these people know that the Force isn't childish, but like it's not on the grounds that the Force is childish, but the Force is just like that you can't tell an original story with the Force anymore, which you absolutely can,
yeah,
and they do it all the time.
yeah.
The only way to do something truly interesting and original and new is to not have the Force in it, which I just think is bullshit. But anyway, regardless of that, anything else for this? Actually, anything else for this episode before I bring up the final thing?
Some pretty great names. Zebulon, Dak,
I was gonna mention
Speeder
Zebulon
Company.
Dak.
Okay, go away. Go ahead then. Go ahead.
Zebulon Dak. Well, I was gonna talk about the choice they made at the end of this episode
Go
to
for it.
abandon their friends so they can get that good gig with Zebulon Dak we never actually get to see. That is such I'm like I remember specifically when I watched that, I'm like, is Droids gonna make me cry? I'm like, this is surprisingly heartfelt.
Yeah, I think it's a good
Yes, it
move
was
for
a
this.
sacrifice, R2, but that's what friends are for. I'm like, damn, that's actually pretty meaningful. Like that's pretty good for
Yeah.
an 80s cartoon.
Yeah, C-3PO is dropping the heat with his quotes in his
Absolutely.
episodes.
Yeah. I was astonished with, yeah.
I thought it was an
Uh
interesting move. I think it kind of keeps the story moving forward so they can get to different plots
yeah,
in the
absolutely.
season.
And I was wondering how they were going to do that, but I never expected for this to be a voluntary choice in the first arc.
Yeah, yeah, I agree actually. I didn't. Yeah, it was a. I don't know exactly what my thoughts are, but it definitely wasn't the choice I was expecting to end it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Think if you don't have anything else, I think that's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week, we're going to be covering the first half of the Tamuzan arc, which is called The Lost Prince and the New King, are the names of the 2 episodes, if I'm not incorrect. Yeah, Lost Prince and the New King. Until then, you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, we will be there. Follow us at In the Galaxy Pod on Twitter, at Star Wars in the Galaxy on Instagram, my personal account, OCHEFan327 on Twitter, and what was I going to say? And subscribe to our YouTube channel, Star Wars in Galaxy. We just recorded Epic Confrontations 10, Jared versus Bill, earlier today. That's going to be coming out very soon. Hope everybody's excited for that. It's a very fun match. Had a lot of fun. Jacob finally returns to the desk for Epic Confrontations, which we're all very excited about. And I think that's it. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.